Hello and welcome to Jay's session, What's New for SQL Server 2012 Reporting Services. My name is Carolyn Chow and I'm a Principal Program Manager at Microsoft in the BI division. And today we're going to be taking a look at some of the new features coming with reporting services specifically. So the agenda is we'll first have a short recap of Reporting Services 2008 R2, which was the last release of SQL Server. We'll discuss the SQL Server 2012 pillars, and then we'll look at the key investment areas for Reporting Services 2012, and then we'll spend a little bit of time looking ahead beyond 2012. So really quickly, in the SQL Server 2008 R2 timeframe, we invested very heavily in the corporate BI scenario. That means that we spent a lot of time developing features that were specific to corporate BI, especially around things like the enabling end users to have a much easier reporting experience using our report builder and other tools. Some of the investment areas that we focused on, first of all, is the ability to have reusable parts within our tools. So as an end user, one of the hardest things that we find is for users to be able to go and get started with reporting. So one of the things that we've done in SQL Server 2008 R2 is allow users to have reusable report parts. Those report parts can be everything from a simple shared data set, which means that you go ahead and create a data set that your users can then build visualizations on top of, or you can actually take whole visualizations, a chart, a map, a gauge, a spark line, and you can actually save those directly into the report catalog, and your users can go in and then search for those and just simply add them to their report. That way they can combine multiple visualizations together and just make changes to those visualizations, and instead of having to start from scratch and creating all the visualizations as well as the data. Report parts, when you add them to the report library, they actually have all the information they need to process, which means that not only do they have and include the visualization, but also the data sets, the connection information, the parameter information. That all gets encapsulated into the report part, making it really easy for users to just simply manipulate and combine them together. We also added a set of new visualizations to our visualization capability, and some of the highlights of those are the ability to have mapping capability. So that's not just geospatial. They don't have to be geographic maps. You can actually map anything that's a spatial type. So things like floor plans or locations, things like that. In addition to maps, we also have gauges and spark lines and data bars and KPI support. Also, we added the ability to support AJAX to our report viewer. So those of you who are familiar with our report viewer capability, this is a control which ships with Visual Studio and allows you to embed reporting directly into your applications. We've enhanced that with AJAX support, giving you more control and better performance overall with the report viewer. We've also completed a number of customer DCRs. These are things that you as our customers have voted on and surfaced to the top of our list in terms of new capabilities that you requested, and we fulfilled a bunch of those. In the process of focusing on these key areas, we did cut a few scenarios for SQL Server 2008 R2, specifically around ad hoc reporting and alerting, and you'll see some of that come back in the SQL Server 2012 release. So moving on to the SQL Server 2012 pillars. These are the main pillars for the release of SQL Server 2012. And the driver is delivering business agility and innovation to gain strategic value out of your information. And along with that, there are 3 pillars to SQL Server 2012. The first is mission critical platform. This is really all about increasing flexibility and having great scalability as well as high availability with your solution. So you'll see things like features like always on fall into this category, as well as data warehousing with parallel data warehouse. Really great developments in both scale, performance, availability. In the middle pillar, we have developer and IT productivity. This is all about having one great set of tools for you to build your solutions with, and having those be really cost-effective, easy to manage, and help you build those solutions really quickly, get them out into the marketplace. And those solutions are also encapsulated into one development platform. We have the BI Development Studio specifically for business intelligence solution development. That's one set of tools, one familiar environment for you to go in and build your end-to-end BI solutions. And finally, on the right-hand side is your pillar for pervasive insight. We're going to be focusing mostly on this pillar today. Reporting services as a feature of SQL Server is really focused around enabling end users to have really great insights with their data. So this is all about expanding the reach of BI to more broadly the business users in your organization, having really great breakthrough performance with the new in-memory analytics. And this is all about Power Pivot and having the Vertipack engine integrated into the server in the SQL Server 2012 timeframe. And of course, all of that comes together to help your users deliver really credible and consistent data. For SQL Server 2012 reporting services, we also have three main pillars, and we'll go from right to left on these. The first pillar is really about increasing efficiency, and this is our investment, our continued investment into SharePoint integration for reporting services. In the SQL Server 2012 timeframe, reporting services is now a shared service of SharePoint, and that means that we have all of the great capabilities of being a native SharePoint service. Some of those key capabilities are having the built-in scale-out ability that comes directly with SharePoint, and having the ability to report cross-farm, and also a really fully integrated administration and configuration ability directly within SharePoint with integrated backup, recovery, logging, configuration, PowerShell, and so forth. And I'll show you some of that as we move along. In the middle, we have a pillar around increasing productivity and proactive intelligence. In the main capability that we have here is a new end-user alerting capability. This is all about defining alerts within your reports. So if your end users are going through and they find content, a report that they're really interested in, and they'd like to be notified when something in that report changes or crosses some kind of threshold, there's a really new, easy-to-use UI for creating and defining those alerts. And I'll go ahead and show that to you also. We also have added the support for the Excel and Word 2007 and 2010 export formats. With the previous version of reporting services, we were still exporting to the 2003 format, and we've seen a lot of demand for exporting to the new formats. And finally, on the left-hand side, we have a pillar around empowering end users. And our solution, our new offering in this area is the Power View application. This is a new ad hoc reporting tool. It's a very highly visual design experience driven by a rich metadata layer, which is your BI semantic model. And it allows you to create and tell stories with your data and present your data at all times. So let's go ahead and drill into each of these pillars individually. First of all, we'll talk about the infrastructure investment with the new SharePoint integrated mode. This is really a continued investment for reporting services. Over the last few releases, you've seen us integrate into SharePoint and our integration become more and more deeply ingrained into the SharePoint experience. For SQL Server 2012, we integrate with SharePoint 2010 as a shared service. And some of those highlights are the ability to host ourselves inside of SharePoint now using the SharePoint Shared Service app pool. So there's not a separate set of security that you need to configure for managing your SharePoint farm. Also, the reporting services catalog databases are now SharePoint Service application databases. So we don't create a custom database, we just go ahead and leverage and extend the SharePoint Service application database capability directly. As part of this work, we've also added WCF and claims-based communication and authentication. So now you can really seamlessly pass your security from SharePoint all the way through to the back end for reporting services using WCF and claims. And instead of having WMI as our management and scripting capability, we've now integrated with PowerShell and use PowerShell commandlets for doing that. All of our UI for managing reporting services integration into SharePoint is now part of SharePoint's central administration UI, and I'll go ahead and show you some of that in a few minutes. And also the logging capabilities are now not separate on the reporting services server, they're fully integrated into SharePoint logging. One of the pain points that we had seen previously was SharePoint would log its events into its own logs. Reporting services on the server would log events separately, and if you were really trying to diagnose a problem end to end, you had to take two separate log capabilities, match them up, and then figure out what was going on. Now with a single integrated logging directly in SharePoint, that debugging experience is going to be much easier for you. And finally, as a shared service, we can use SharePoint's native scale-out and load balancing capabilities directly. In terms of performance, one of the key areas of customer feedback that we heard was that reports, especially smaller reports, tended to be a little bit slower in SharePoint integrated mode, and we've gone ahead and fixed that. And in fact, now with SQL Server 2008 R2 SharePoint mode compared to the new SQL Server 2012 SharePoint mode, we've seen a increase in performance in the 30 to 60% range. So we're very excited about that, and we hope that you will find that your SharePoint integrated mode reports will run much more quickly than they did before. We also, as I previously mentioned, made a number of enhancements to our Ajax report viewer. We've added the support for Ajax so that you can get some more dynamic interaction with the viewer. We've added a number of features that were highly desired by and requested by you, our customers, and we've also increased the performance of that viewer also. SQL Server also now has a setup option directly for reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode. So as you're going through the setup experience, there will be one place for you to go ahead and configure and manage your setup through the SQL Server setup capabilities directly. There's no additional setup step needed after. Some of the summary of the key differences between the SQL Server 2008 R2 experience versus the SQL Server 2012 experience is we moved from having a Windows shared service for reporting services into the SharePoint shared service itself. So there's not a separate service for reporting services now. The configuration and manageability capabilities that we used to have in a separate configuration tool are now moved directly to SharePoint Central Administration. Our manageability APIs in WMI, as I mentioned previously, have now been moved to the PowerShell commandlet capability. And then our report server URLs and access now go through a proxy and are exposed as such. So let me go ahead and just show you really quickly what some of that management UI looks like. So I have a page already open to SharePoint Central Administration, and you can see here we have a Managed Service Applications link. And when I click on that, you'll now see that there is an RS application, SQL Server Reporting Services service application, alongside Excel services and some of the other applications that run directly as a shared service. When I click the Reporting Services shared application, you'll see a set of different actions or activities that I can take. There's some system settings. I can come in here and now configure the report server settings for timeouts, for compression, report timeout, session timeouts. I can enable logging from here. I can specify the type of security that we use, whether it's integrated or not, and some of the security settings that we have on the server. And we can also define what kind of client capabilities are exposed in the report server. And those are just some of the properties that we have. You can also manage your jobs here if you've defined jobs, or I don't have any in this particular case, but if you've defined scheduled jobs in reporting services, those will show up. You can of course back up and monitor and restore and change your keys. That's very important. Set the execution account, so if you do schedule reports, you can set the execution account here. Configure the email settings and provision scripts, subscriptions, and alerts directly here. The next thing I'm going to go show you is just really quickly the the monitoring capabilities. And you'll see that there's now a configure diagnostics function in SharePoint, which we integrate into. This is the integrated logging that I mentioned before. In the categories, you'll now find a SQL Server Reporting Services category. You can enable logging, and there's a whole list of different logging features that you can turn on. You can tell everything from the number of users, the pages that are viewed, the types of extensions that people are connecting with, the notifications that are coming, the memory monitoring that we're doing, the types of clients that are accessing the server, and really have a lot of fine-grained control over the different types of logging that you can do. All right, so that gives you a little bit of an overview of the reporting services management capability directly in SharePoint. If I come back to Central Admin, you'll also see that there are actually a set of application settings. And if I come in here, there's a SQL Server Reporting Services setting here. And if you're using SQL Server 2012, you actually don't need to use this section, just a reminder. These are if you're connecting this instance of SharePoint and you're going to go against an older instance of reporting services on the server. If you're using SQL Server 2008 or SQL Server 2008 R2, you configure that integration here. But if you're using SQL Server 2012, you want to go ahead and manage your application directly by going to Manage Service Applications here and going to the RS application. All right. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of the SharePoint integrated experience. So let's go ahead and move on to the next section. The next area that I talked about previously is our investment in operational reporting. And there are two particular areas that we've invested in here. The first is self-service alerting, and then also the Office 2007-2010 integration. With self-service alerting, as I said, the user's looking at a report. This is an end user who's consuming a report. They have the ability to now define and create alerts off of those reports. They pick a particular set of data that they want to alert on. They create the alert. They define the rules which trigger the alert. And then that will get sent to them via an email, and they can manage their own alerts using the alert management capability directly in SharePoint. This is a SharePoint integrated mode functionality, and it comes with SharePoint integrated mode. So this new alerting capability is built directly on reports any reports that you've previously created on reporting services using either BIDS or Report Builder. There's nothing that you have to do in order to enable this alerting capability on your existing reports. You just need to upgrade to the new version of reporting services. So if you created a report here, this is probably a Report Builder report, and it's got some tables and some charts. There's no change to the report itself. This new alerting capability just sits on top of it when you upgrade. And as I mentioned previously, it's very easy to do that. It's very end-user focused. It's integrated with SharePoint, and it really is developed for the end user to be able to create and manage their own alerts. There's a scheduling capability that comes with this alerting, which means that when you create the rules that trigger the alert, you can also define how often those rules get run. And you can specify how often it gets run, also specify who gets the alert and some of the description that comes along with the alert. I'm going to show you all of these inside of the demo in a few minutes. When the user receives the alert, it looks sort of like this. They get the body of the alert, they understand and see what data actually triggered the alert and the rules that triggered the alert. It's very actionable. They can go back and look at the report directly. It shows the context of when and how that alert was triggered, and it's really simple, and it can go to a single or multiple recipients. And you can either put in individual email addresses or discussion groups or aliases here also. In terms of the workflow, what you can do is also manage these alerts directly within SharePoint. So as a user, I can come in and take a look at all the alerts that I've defined on any report within the site, and I can go ahead and manage them in the list form, and I'll show you that also. As an administrator to the site, I can go ahead and look at all the alerts that have been created on the site by every user and manage all of those alerts together. So for the IT administrator, in order to get this capability, what you need to do is install reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode, and you configure the settings that are stored in the SharePoint database. You can monitor these alerts. You can go ahead and create and monitor and log the capabilities that are being used through the alerting. You can also enable tracing and logging through the ULS logs that I showed you. There's a new row item for logging the use of alerting. And you have performance counters to determine when you need to scale out or when you need to also go ahead and add additional hardware for your configuration. The more alerts and more frequently you run the alerts, of course, that will require resources. So if you choose, or if your users choose to run alerts every day or every minute, then of course that's going to require more resources, because we're running the reports in order to determine whether the alerts get triggered and checking that on a frequent basis. So let's go ahead and show you self-service alerting. I'm here in SharePoint. As I mentioned before, this capability is directly integrated in SharePoint, and I have this report called Project Tracking. I'm going to go ahead and run that report. And this is, again, a report that I've created previously in Report Builder, and it's an existing report that I've had. And this is just a very, very simple report that shows me people on my team, some of the tasks that they're supposed to do, the due date on those tasks, the ETA, and then the completed date. And perhaps as a manager of this team of people, what I really want to do is get notified whenever one of my directs completes a task behind schedule. So what I want to do is create a little alert here, and you can see that there's this Actions tab. And when I go ahead and drop down the Actions tab, there's a new data alert item. And when I click on it, it'll bring up UI, which will allow me to create the alert. So here I am. I have this task list. If I had more than one table, if I had multiple charts, the data behind those would show up in this list, and I could go ahead and pick which set of data I want to alert on. In this case, I only have one, so I'll go ahead and just see the data for that particular one data region. I can create an alert name, so I can say this is my project tracking alert. And then I can define the rules around that alert. So if I click here, I can say alert me if any data has met these conditions, or if no data meets these conditions. And this time I'll choose if any data has and add a rule. And I want a rule based on the due date of the task. And I can say the due date is, and I can say is not before or after. I can put in a date directly. I can pick a date from a calendar. Or I can drop down and say, well, I'd like to compare the due date to another field. And that's what I'm going to do in this case. So I'm going to say when the due date is, when the completed date is after, and I'll go ahead and select another field, and I'll say when the completed date is after the due date. So I want to know when tasks are late. I can then go ahead and add another rule, and I could say, well, I'm really concerned about George, or I'm concerned about somebody else, and I can go ahead and say when the person is George, or when the person is Adam, or it's in a list of some kind. So that is the ability to define more than one rule for an alert. And you can see that all the rules get AND together, and so they'll get run sequentially. Once I have the rules I want, and I'll just keep it simple and say alert me when the completed date is after the due date, I can set the schedule for that alert. And the schedule can be every day, every week, every hour, and every minute. If you set it to be every minute, that's going to run the report every minute and go ahead and try to compare your rules and see if that alert's going to get triggered. So it is resource intensive if you pick some of the more frequent schedules. I can also click this advanced button and see that I can set the alert to start on some other day if I don't want it to start today. I can define a time frame for that alert and stop the alert at some point. And one of the great things that we added also is the ability to not send a message if the alert hasn't changed. So if I keep triggering the alert on the same value, I just want to get alerted once. I don't want to know if the same value is triggering the alert over and over again. I can say, don't send me a message if the same value is triggering the alert. Then I can decide who's going to receive that email. In this case, I'm going to send it to my own account. I can add additional accounts, and I can add discussion aliases or security groups here also. I can add a subject for the alert, and I can also add a description. So I can go ahead and type in my task tracking alert. And I'll go ahead and save that. And that's all I had to do in order to create an alert. When I go back now and drop down the project tracking report item, I'll see there's a manage data alerts item in the drop-down list of actions that I can take on this report. And when I click on that, you'll see a list of the alerts on this report. So I'm logged in as this account user. I could have created an alert on this report. If I had alerts on multiple reports, they would show up in this list. And this is the new alert that I just created, the project tracking alert. I can go ahead and run that directly. If I right-click on it, I can edit the alert, delete it, or I can just go ahead and run it and execute it. And if I refresh the page in a minute, it'll go ahead and show me that the alert was created and that now it's been run. So I ran the alert, and the alert ran successfully. What I've done is actually, I don't have a web server installed, a mail server installed on this machine, but I have set up the delivery to actually deliver to my local disk into this little file. And you can see today is 2/10/2012, and I now have an email message here that shows me that my alert was triggered when I ran it. It was sent on behalf of this account, and I can see exactly which rule or which data in the data set triggered the alert. George was supposed to arrange a meeting with Contoso. The due date was 2/5. The ETA was 2/5 that he put in previously. The due date was 2/10, and it didn't get completed until 2/15. And it looks like all the sales reps were here in Seattle attending a SQL Server event. So I can go directly to the report and take a look at the full set of the data, and I can also see and read the rules that triggered that alert. So it's very simple end user UI for creating the alerts, sending the messages around those alerts, and really being able to have a great experience as an end user to define those. As the account, as the site administrator, I can actually come in now, and if I go to Site Actions, I can go to Site Settings, and as administrator of this site, I can see there's a Reporting Services section of the site settings, and I can actually manage the data alerts here. So if I come in, I'll see that if I had more users, I would see all of the alerts for all the users, as well as all of the alerts for all of the different reports that I have in my system. And as an administrator, I can go ahead and now manage all of the alerts on this site. So that gives you a little bit of a demo of the alerting capability, and we'll come back and continue on. The next investment we're going to talk about is the OpenXML rendering extensions for Office. With the SQL Server 2012 release, Reporting Services now supports the Office 2007 export formats, and that means that when we generate an export, the export will then create either DocX for Word or XLSX for Excel. And the goal of this functionality really was to make sure that we could generate these formats but still have feature parity with the existing Word and Excel renderers. So you shouldn't see any differences in the look of the report as we've moved to the new format. It should just upgrade your format and gives you some of the nice capabilities of the new format. One of the biggest gains that we see from being able to export to the new format is that the formats are zip compressed files. And that means that the export that you get is actually much smaller than it used to be, and that zip compressed file now takes up less space. So that makes it much easier for users who are exporting and then emailing those files or putting them somewhere. In addition, you get some of the nice native capabilities that come with the new format. In Excel, one of the biggest benefits that we hear customers want is the move from 65,000 rows to 1 million rows in Excel, as well as the 256 columns to the 16,000 columns. So you can really get much bigger exports to Excel if you want them. And also, one of the nice side benefits is we've gone with the new format to having going from a 56 color palette to the 24-bit color palette. That means that your reporting services reports that you define will export with much more color fidelity than they used to. So lots of great benefits to exporting to the new formats. The new formats are turned on by default, so when you go to export your report, they will automatically export to DocX or XLSX. If you would like to keep your users exporting to the old formats, you can go to the configuration file for reporting services and you can configure the other exports, the older exports as the default, or re-enable them if you want. And then finally, let's go ahead and take a look at the self-service BI investment. And this is really all about thin ad hoc reporting with our new ad hoc reporting tool called PowerView. What is PowerView? This is our vision and mission statement for PowerView. It's an interactive data exploration and visual presentation experience. And those are really the words that help you understand the experience and the goals of the new ad hoc reporting tool. It is very highly interactive. You explore your data with the data directly on the canvas all the time, and it's always ready to be presented. We want you to be able to discover insights into your data, tell stories with your data, and present your insights. Some of the key capabilities of PowerView are highlighted here. First of all, as I mentioned, there's a highly visual design experience. It's interactive, it's fully web-enabled and web-based. All a user needs is a web browser and Silverlight. It's designed after the familiar Microsoft Office design patterns. So if your users are used to using Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint, they'll find PowerView very familiar. And there are many new data visualization types that we've added, as well as making those visualizations much easier to create inside of PowerView. PowerView is driven by a rich metadata layer, and that's the BI semantic model. That's also fully integrated with Power Pivot, so you can, in the SQL Server 2012 timeframe, create a BI semantic model using the Power Pivot add-in directly inside of Excel. So if you have end users who want to do their own modeling and mash up data from multiple data sources, you can go ahead and have them install the Power Pivot add-in and create their BI semantic model directly inside of Excel. They can then publish that Power Pivot workbook to a SharePoint library and use Power Pivot to visualize on top of that workbook. There's also a very powerful querying capability inside of PowerView. The user doesn't have to know anything about querying, writing any queries, or defining any languages. They just interact with the data directly. There's no configuration for some of the interactivity, and I will show you some of those. It's also very highly animated and allows you to do trending and comparisons very easily. And finally, it's presentation ready at all times. This means that there's actually an interactive presentation mode that you can put the application into, and that's all delivered and allows you to collaborate directly through SharePoint. A little bit of an overview of some of the UI in PowerView. I mentioned it's completely web-based. It includes a very familiar Microsoft Office ribbon. It has access to the semantic model, and that's the BI semantic model on the right-hand side there. It allows you to configure and customize visualizations for your reports using the field area. And all you have to do in order to create one of these reports is simply drag and drop objects and see them come to life on your screen. So PowerView also allows you to go directly from authoring to presentation in a very few clicks. It's really easy to change the data and layout just by converting one visualization to another. It's fully interactive, allows you to collaborate, and you can then share your reports very quickly on SharePoint. A little summary. Again, it's powered by Silverlight. It's fully thin. That means it's also cross-browser and cross-platform compatible, and it's very easy to manage and discoverable inside of SharePoint. The new PowerView capability is fully integrated into the reporting stack for reporting services. It doesn't replace any of our existing tools. It's a new capability that enhances our existing suite of tools. We have 3 tools for reporting services for designing reports. The first is the Report Designer tool you'll see on the left-hand side. That's really geared towards developers who are mostly interested in directly embedding reports into other applications. The Report Designer tool is in Visual Studio. It's a fairly sophisticated design environment, allows you to do source control, embed your custom code inside of reports directly. It allows you to build projects with our report viewer controls and has a very rich design experience. As I said, it's targeted mostly at developers and some IT pros. In the middle, we have Report Builder. That's also very flexible in its ability to lay out data, fully supports the constructs of RDL, and allows you to now, with SQL Server 2008 R2, also reuse insights with that grab-and-go reusable parts of reports that I talked about at the very beginning. Report Builder is very targeted at IT pros and power users who want the flexibility and the power of reporting services in RDL, but don't want to be in the Visual Studio environment. It gives them a nice, comfortable, familiar Microsoft Office shell, but doesn't restrict them in terms of their depth of usage of reporting services. And now we have PowerView, which is our new offering. It's very much geared at end users who want to explore their data, create rich data presentations that have very interactive content, and also present their data and share it with others. And you can see that the spectrum runs from embedded to operational to self-service reporting. I'm going to go ahead and show you a demo of PowerView to show you some of its rich features. Here we are in SharePoint, and you can see this is a normal SharePoint page with a document library. And I'm going to show you a demo today using this Movlia data set in this folder. So I'm going to click on the folder, and inside this folder I have a data source that I'm going to use and launch PowerView from. So I'll click on the drop-down, and you can see there's a Create PowerView Report button. I'll go ahead and click that. PowerView will be launched. You can see that PowerView is a full, thin Silverlight application, and it's designed after the Microsoft Office paradigms. You can see on the top there's a ribbon, and on the right-hand side there's a field list area, and the field list area provides me the information I need about the data that I have. So in this particular data set, we're looking at movies data and downloads and revenues of movies. I have information about my movies themselves, and I have information about the dates of the downloads, the regions, the sales, and so forth. I can start my report by simply adding a title. In order to explore my data set, all I have to do is start selecting items in my list. I'll go ahead and select movies, and you can see my list of movies shows up immediately, and I can start exploring and looking at the movies in my inventory. I can scroll through and see that the most interesting fields about movies automatically showed up for me. I have the title, the poster, the director, the provider, the genre, the rating, the user rating. And that's actually just a subset of the different fields that I have about movies. The underlying metadata, or this model, automatically tells me and shows me that the most interesting fields about movies, and they get automatically selected when I select the table. One of the most powerful things about PowerView is that we can transform the look of data within a single click. So I can take this table of data and easily transform it to a completely different visualization by selecting a different visualization in this gallery. For example, I can select this card visualization, and that exact same table of data is now this card visualization, which is just a different layout of the same data, but it gives me a nice way to look at this particular list. We can also continue to explore by adding some additional visualizations to our report. First of all, let's go ahead and take a look at the ratings of the movies and see the breakdown of downloads by the ratings. So I'll go ahead and go to the sales table and select the downloads year-to-date for sales. You can see everything lands on the page as a little table in PowerView, and then I can verify that the data seems correct. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and select a completely different visualization. For example, I can select for this data the column chart type, and it'll take that same table of data and transform it to a column chart. As a user, I didn't have to think about where to put items on the axes and the different axes. Power View decided for me and made the right decision about putting the rating on the x-axis and the downloads on the y-axis. Let's go ahead and add another chart. I'll go ahead and select the genres of the movies, and you can see the different genres: action, comedy, drama. And then I'll go ahead in this case and add the revenues year to date. Once I've done that, again, I can verify that the data looks about correct, and then I can go ahead and transform it to a different data visualization. In this case, I'll select the bar visualization. Within a very few clicks, I've now created a very nice looking report. One of the nice things about Power View, though, is that when you create a report, it's not just the visualizations on the page. Because we understand the metadata behind this data set, and there's a model that determines all the relationships within the data, I automatically get interactivity for free. So for example, I can go ahead and click on this rated R bar, and the bottom chart will go ahead and show me the contribution of the rated R movies to the movies by genre. And the list of movies will then get filtered to show me just the rated R movies. And you can see, of course, these are rated R movies. And I can do the same thing from the bottom chart. I can go ahead and, for example, click on comedy. The top chart will then show the contribution of comedy movies, and the left table will show just the list of comedy movies. Let's go ahead and take a look at another visualization. I'm going to take this bar chart and transform it to a scatter chart. Now for the scatter chart, I'm going to need to add a couple more measures. So I'm going to go ahead and add the downloads year to date, and the number of titles is going to give me the size of the bubbles. So what I'm doing in the scatter chart is I'm comparing the revenue to the downloads, and you can see immediately that our two largest sellers are comedy and science fiction movies. I'll add a little more information. I'll go ahead and select the dates, and I'm going to drag this month field to this play axis area. What that's going to do is allow me to take a look at this data over time. So now I have a play axis, and you can actually see that the play axis is going to allow me to animate and show the trend over time. I can click the play button, and it'll go ahead and start showing me the trends of those movie growths over time. You can see comedy grows very steadily, and if it's not big enough, I can go ahead and pop it out and take a look at it in a larger size. Let's go ahead and play that again. So like I said, comedy comes out and grows very steadily, and you can see that right at the end, the science fiction bubble starts to grow, and it catches up and surpasses the comedy sales right at the end. I can actually take a look at the trends of those sales by clicking on the different bubbles, and that'll show me the spacing between the bubbles. And that's actually very important in this case because it gives us an indicator that the trend is very different between those two genres of movies. I can move backwards and forwards in time and look at any period of time if I'm interested in digging a little deeper. So let's go ahead and pop that back in. And another type of visualization that we can add in Power View is to transform this table into what we call a tile. Because Power View is designed for the screen, we want to optimize use of space and give you different ways to navigate large sets of data. What tiles do is allow you to go ahead and navigate these movies one by one in this data set, and also gives you a little space to add information about each specific movie. Right now I have 102 Dalmatians selected, and what I'm going to do is add a little chart that shows me the breakout of the movie sales by region. So I'll go ahead and add the region name. And for each region, I'm going to go ahead and show the downloads and the revenue. And I'm going to turn that into a clustered bar chart. There we go. And that shows me the sales of this movie in the different regions that I sell in. I can now then go ahead and scroll through and take a look at any particular movie that I want just by selecting it in the list. And you'll see that this visualization changes to show me details about that particular movie, but these total visualizations over here do not change because they represent summaries of the information across all movies. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is show you a couple of different views that I've already pre-created, and we'll see a couple of additional features of Power View. So in this particular report, I've started with the same kind of view that I've already just shown you how to build, and I've also added that play axis view here. And what I'm showing you on the left-hand side of the screen is actually a view sorter where I can add one or more views in Power View to the same report. So in this case, I've pre-created 2 views here. And then in this third view, I have a chart created which shows me the downloads and the revenue by each individual movie. And I have a large number of movies that I'm showing here. I can easily go ahead and add color to this chart just by selecting a field to color by. So I'll grab the rating, and you can see in the field area here, I have a color drop area. And when I drop that in, it'll go ahead and color each movie by the type of rating that it is. And I can see I've got rated G, rated PG, PG-13, rated R. And if I select in the legend, you'll see that the movies that are of that genre get highlighted. And actually there's a very big difference in the distribution of the revenue and downloads by genre. For PG-13, you can see there's a nice large distribution. But if I look at rated G, for example, you'll see most of our downloads and revenues are not in the rated G genre. They're very low. So that's one example of color usage and interactivity. Let's go ahead and move to another view. In this view, you'll see that I have a chart that shows the genres of movies and the downloads of the movies. Now I've already got a rating in the chart, so the chart's showing me color here. What I really want to do is compare this information by each individual region that I sell in. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and, in the field list, take the region name, and this time I'm going to drop it on this area called vertical multiples. What vertical multiples does is that it gives me a way to easily compare the exact same data across a particular different dimension, in this case, the region. So you can see that I've got a shared axis both on the left-hand side and on the bottom that allows me to easily compare each of my different regions. And I can see that I have very low sales in New England versus very high sales in the South, in the Midwest, and the Northeast. And that's just a really easy way to compare data. And in order to create this view, all I had to do was exactly drop one field into this drop area. I didn't have to go and recreate a chart for each of the different types of, each of the different regions in my data. Next, I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple more examples of interactivity. You can see here I've got a nice report created. On the left-hand side, I have a slicer, which shows all of my different genres of movies. I have a chart that shows downloads by genre, ratings, downloads by rating, and also a little multiple that's showing me the downloads and the downloads by month and genre. So what I'm going to do first is show you some sorting in this particular chart here. You'll see right now I'm sorting the genres in ascending order by the label. If I click the ascending button, it'll automatically sort the genres in descending order. Now I have westerns at the start instead of action. If I want to sort by the measure, all I have to do is click right here, and it'll go ahead and show me the genres with the largest sales first. And if I want to change that to sort in the other direction, it's very easy. I just have to click the descending button to change it into ascending. And now I have my comedy sales on the right-hand side. The next thing I'll show you is some cross-filtering. So you can see I have these ratings here. If I go ahead and select any particular rating and click on it, you'll see what will happen is that I'm going to get the contribution of that rating, the rated R movie sales. And down here, I've also limited the data just to show me rated R movie sales across the different genres. And of course, I can do the same thing here by selecting on comedy. And what you'll see is the focus, the contribution of comedy movies, and then the bottom area focuses on comedy. The next thing I can do is use the slicers that I have on the left-hand side of my report, and I can select a few of my genres. And first I'll show genre, drama, and then I can click on, for example, horrors and documentary, and really focus on those 3 particular genres if I wanted to see sales for those 3. That shows you some of the very interactive capabilities of PowerView. Finally, I'm going to show you a view that is a tile view, very similar to the one that I showed you at the beginning, except this tile is a large tile that takes the entire page. And of course, I can scroll through and now see very easily that I have all these movies in my inventory, and I can go ahead and change the view to any particular movie, and all of the information inside the tile will change to show me the sales information for this particular movie. Within the tile, I can also have the same type of interactivity. I have, for example, this region name, and I can go ahead and just select Southern, and this table down here below, which is showing all states at the moment, will filter and show just the states in the Southern region. And you can see the contribution of the Southern region to the sales and downloads, the revenue and downloads of that particular movie. Now I've shown you a set of really nice views that I've created here. And what I want to do now, once I've created the views, is go ahead and share those and present those to others. So what I can do for that is go ahead and go to this Home tab, and in the Home tab you'll see there's a full screen button. And when I click the full screen button, it's going to allow me to present this data, very similar to the way that you would present a PowerPoint presentation. I still have the full interactivity that I had while designing my report, except now what I'm doing is walking someone through my thinking and my logic around how I came to some of the conclusions that I came to in my analysis. I may want to do some interactivity like selecting and clicking, for example, the science fiction category here, and I can go ahead and tell a story about the different movies that are in the science fiction genre. I can navigate through my different slides just by clicking the slide sorter and the slide button here. And alternately, I can go ahead and actually look at all the slides and go and jump from one to another if I need to skip a slide or go back to a slide. And that's very easy to do. And those are really, again, the recap of the 3 major investment areas that we've had for 2012 for reporting services. The first is SharePoint integrated mode, the enhancements that we've made to make reporting services a shared service of SharePoint, the alerting capabilities, the new export formats, and also ad hoc reporting with PowerView. If we look ahead a little bit, in the same wave, in the SQL Server 2012 wave, we also have some additional investments. We've moved the biz development environment to Visual Studio 2010, so now you can have a single environment to build your BI solutions using Visual Studio 2010, and that uses the SQL Server 2008 R2 engine. Dev 11, Visual Studio 11 is also coming, and we're working on that release. We've made a commitment that we will ship the developer experience within just a few months of any Visual Studio release, and that'll help you to get some of the new functionality much sooner. We also have a new service called SQL Azure Reporting. This is really cloud reporting. The value proposition is really around developers and system integrators and IT departments. A lot of the benefits are just the benefits that come with having a cloud application. This is an out-of-the-box service that you can register for, and you get all of the capabilities of reporting services in the cloud. And its elasticity, it gives you scalability and reliability of cloud computing. It's very cost effective, and it's symmetrical, so you can design and develop your BI solutions using your desktop tools, specifically the BIDS environment, and then you can just simply deploy that to the cloud. There's no changes that you have to make to your existing solutions just to have them run in the cloud. Though right now this is in beta form, there's in the V1 version of this offering, it's really about operational reporting over SQL Azure data. So the one important requirement to keep in mind is that SQL Azure reporting needs to go against data that's in SQL Azure itself. So you need to store your data in the cloud when you want your reporting in the cloud. And then you can go ahead and embed this cloud capability directly in your applications using our report viewer controls. The architecture is very flexible, and it gives you the infrastructure of SQL Azure as a data tier, as well as Windows Azure for hosting. The availability, the RS gateway includes tenant isolation and smart routing. and it has multi-tenancy, and the performance is great because the reporting services server can be co-located, co-resides with your end user data. Currently in CTP form, you can go to this URL to get some more information about it. And just a quick reminder that when you're reporting for the cloud, you really can build the exact same applications that you've had. You can use your existing reports. The one gotcha is that you need to also have that data directly in SQL Azure. So you use bids. All you have to do is point the server that where you deploy to a new URL, which is a cloud-looking URL like this is an example. And if you're interested in checking out a sample of a cloud application that we've built and are hosting ourselves, you can go ahead and go to this URL and take a look. So thank you very much for attending today's session on Reporting Services 2012. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you at the next session.